Dober večer. Ja, čisto kratek uvod v slovenščini, potem pa seveda pogovor bo tekel v angleškem jeziku. Če bi kdo želel neposredni prevod oziroma tolmačenje, prosim, dvignite roko, pa bo Jedrt ali Vesna vam bosta pomagala, če kdorkoli kar z besedo na dan. Marjolijn, is it all right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, van Heemstra. Yeah, I was trying to do the right thing right now. Because the name is important, especially in your novel.
True, that's true, yeah.
The origin, the title in origin is In the Search of the Name. Our translation is In imenu bo, which was actually, Slovene translation of the title was something that caught my eye. Because it's like, it's not in the search of the name, but what will be the name? Maybe no one told you that. But Marjolijn, I will start with the short part of your novel in Slovenian, so that our public will know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about naming or choosing the name for a person. Moje raziskovanje ga je pričelo utrujati. Pričkala sva se in zmeraj pristaneva na istem. Dej reče, da je to samo ime. Jaz menim, da je ime vedno več kot samo ime. Spomin, na primer, prvi in največji spomin, ki ti je podarjen. Samo beseda je, nič drugega, nadaljuje D. Koordinata je, trdim jaz. Čisto nič ne pove o tem, kdo bo postal. Čisto vse pove o tem, kdo hočem, da bi postal. Tako si podajava žogico, dokler D ne dvigne dlani, kot da bi na pomoč klical više sile, zmaje z glavo in zapusti prizorišče. Ne zato, ker bi mi dal prav, temveč, ker je nekje prebral, da se z nosečnicami ne splača diskutirati. So, that was the part where we can hear that, we are talking about the pregnant woman. So all the hormones swimming in the body and in the mind and also. But the story has two important lines. First one is, yes, about the name of an unborn firstborn. And of course, the way of living of a pregnant woman, which is about to give that name to her son. And the story is about you, actually. Am I right?
Yeah, most of it is true. Not all of it, but most of it, yeah.
How does it start? Let's say something about the plot.
Okay, so the story is about a woman who is, that's me, and she's pregnant and she needs to find a name for her son. And then her grandmother asked her once, when she was younger, to name her first son to an uncle in the family that was supposed to be a resistance fighter. So in the Second World War, he was a hero. That's what everyone says in the family. And then she already has some doubts about this uncle. Is this story real? Was he really a hero, like we say in the family? And then once she's pregnant, she remembers this promise to her grandmother, and she thinks, okay, I can name my son after this hero in the family, but then first I need to know what the story was. I want to know who I am naming my son after. So while she counts the days until giving birth, she is searching for the story of this name. So who was this uncle, and should she call her son after him or not? That is the question.
And as the belly grows, her doubts grow also. Because this Frans was maybe not such a hero. But first of all, maybe let's do the step back. You come from Amsterdam?
Yes.
And Marjolijn just came today. So actually, first thing I wanted to ask you was, how do you find this town called Novo Mesto?
Well, this is, of course, the best town I've ever been to.
Of course. And it has such a nice name.
Such a lovely name. No, I loved it. I've been walking only for maybe an hour. I noticed that you always come back on this square, so it's very hard to get lost. And I tried to get into the river, but that was hard. And
on the other side,
on
one
that side
is
you
no
can.
problem.
But there, I don't know why, but I saw some people standing. They were fishing in the river, but maybe they live there. So
They might.
I think I'm a bit obsessed with this river. I don't know, because the sun is shining, and in Holland, if the sun shines, if it's only 12 degrees, people swim. Doesn't matter where. We have a lot of water, so they just jump in the water. So I felt the whole day like I have to swim because the sun is shining, but then no one was in the water today.
Well, now Kirke is quite warm. Our river, otherwise it can be really cold. So yeah, you're the right time. I don't know, maybe it now changed from yesterday because we had the rain. Okay, why am I asking you about the towns? Because this pregnant woman, which happens to be you, goes around the town and actually the country, because suddenly everything starts to fall, start to connect. People start calling her with the information.
Yes. She starts to research the story of the uncle, and she visits people, very old people that still have memories of him, and the children of people that knew him, and so slowly she finds out what actually happened, and that's how it happened. And it's funny also, when the book was published, I got even more information because people read it and then they said, "Oh, I also know something," and I felt a bit bad. Then I thought I should write part 2, maybe.
Oh, that's great. But you have to hurry, because a lot of people who know what happens actually,
most
they're
of them
not
are
with
dead.
us. Yes, they're not with us anymore. I'm going to read another part, which is telling about how things got actually not simple, but they started connecting with each other in the story. Maybe these titles are interesting, titles of chapters. It's like 24 tednov, so 24 weeks to go to the birth. Yeah. Vest o mojem raziskovanju je dosegla vse veje našega družinskega drevesa. Daljna teta me pokliče z novico, da je njen zet, zbiratelj starih knjig, prejšnji mesec na dražbi kupil škatlo polno Francovih stvari. Zagledal jo je, niti sanjalo se mu ni, kaj je v njej, je pa na njej pisalo Van Heemstra 1945, zato jo je kupil. Ugani, kaj je bilo v njej. Pomolči, nočem ugibati, vedeti hočem. Ne vem, kar ti mi povej. V tej škatli, spregovori, je vse polno bombaševih fotografij in papirjev. Ta teden bom v Amsterdamu, prinesla ti jo bom, daj mi naslov. Še zmeraj v šoku ob slišanem oddram svoj naslov. Teta zavzeto pripoveduje dalje, pove, da je bila škatla shranjena na podstrešju nekega zbiratelja starih dokumentov, da gre najbolj za vsebino predalov Francove pisalne mize. Toliko vprašanj bi ji rada zastavila, a mi ne uspe izustiti nič razen osuplega momljanja. Fraskati, sodelavka, zdaj pa še to. Teta sem mi obljubi, da pride po jutrišnjem in odloži slušalko. Strašljivo, reče, da komu povem za telefonski klic, preveč na ključi na kupu. Mene pa tovrstne neverjetnosti pomirjajo. Kakor da bi se bombaševa zgodovina prisesala name kot vitičnjak, kot da bi zgodba izbrala mene in ne obratno. Počasi povzi v moje življenje in se mu prilagaja, skrbi za to, da se rima. There is a sentence meaning like this story has chosen me, not the other way around. When did you feel that? Why did you feel that you have to, not just to research that story, not just to explore what happened, but actually to tell it?
Well, why I found it so important was that I felt like I'm going to give new life now, and no matter what happens, I know already that I'm burdening this new life with old life, because we all do. We are all burdened with the past of our parents and our grandparents and all the wars and all the traumas and everything. And I just felt so strongly that I had to do, I don't know, to try at least to unravel some of it for my son. So maybe it was a way to control something that I couldn't control, because being pregnant for the first time feels very much like you lose control over everything. So you think you're going to lose your life, actually, because I thought I will probably not write again. Who am I going to be after this? So I think the obsession was also part of trying to control something. And if you make a story, then you feel like you control it. So it had all these different aspects. It was very noble for my son, but it was also a way for myself to feel like there's something I can control, and that is this story, and the idea of knowing whether this man was right or whether he was wrong. So yeah, I think that was the obsession. And the story chose me. I think once you start to research a story, as you just wrote that part, I recognized something. So I always notice that whenever you dive into something, suddenly it seems like the whole world is only made of this story, because you find so many links and everything is connected. And actually it doesn't matter what you research, it always happens.
But was there any disappointments? Were there any disappointments about finding out that Franz, your great uncle, wasn't such a hero? It might not be such a hero, because we actually, till the end, we won't tell, of course. Actually, we don't know. Did he know that maybe everything was not right in what he was doing?
Maybe it's nice to tell for people who didn't read the book that what actually happened, because I write that immediately in the first page, is this man. The story in my family was that on Sinterklaasavond, it's a typical Dutch party, we give each other presents that are wrapped in, so it's like a surprise present, that he went, 1 year after the war, he went to a collaborator, someone who worked for the Nazis, and he gave him this present, and in the present was a bomb. The bomb went off, the man died, and then in the story that my family told me is some Nazis died, so he was a hero because he was in the resistance already and he wanted to revenge all his friends that he lost. And then I find out quite soon in the book that it wasn't just this man who died, but it was also his wife and a young girl who was working with them in the house. So it was a triple murder. And it was a very different story right from the beginning. The story is very different than my family told me. But that's also a big theme in the book, how every family has their own myths and the stories that they keep telling each other, and they become braver and bigger, and it becomes part of your identity. It's like a blueprint. And for me, personally, it was not maybe such a disappointment, because in a way I never really believed it.
That's why you wanted to research, actually.
Yeah, and also for me, as a writer, it's always nice when something's different than you thought it was. Otherwise, you don't have a book.
You don't have a story. Yeah.
But my family, not everyone in the family was happy to read
That was my next question. Yeah, what was the family thinking about getting actually the truth that maybe they didn't want to hear?
Yeah, some people were quite angry. And thought it was like a bit of a disgrace for the family. And also there were a few people that were hurt because the father of my grandfather was actually shot by the Nazis, so he was in resistance, and they said, why don't you write about him, because he's closer to you and he's a real resistance fighter and you just ignore him. But I felt like it somehow didn't interest me. I mean, all respect to my great-grandfather, but I'm not so interested in people that are so plainly heroic. I was much more interested in this story that is very messy and that we have to sort of squeeze into something to make it a myth of something heroic. So yeah, I wasn't fascinated with the hero, the plain hero.
Maybe we should hear a bit of Dutch language, maybe if you read a part of it right now.
Sure.
So
I will make it short.
So we can get a feeling, because of course I will not understand anything, but okay.
So I only read the first sentence, but I can tell you the first sentence is the longest sentence I ever wrote, because it's a complete page. And in this sentence I write, actually I summarize the whole story in one sentence, and that's the first page. And I write about this ring, that I don't know if you can see it, but this is the ring that my grandmother gave me, and it's the ring from this uncle that he was wearing when he committed the murder. Oké. Als ik geen 18 was geworden, 12 jaar nadat een verre oom in zijn bungalow in Spanje zijn einde voelde naderen. Als hij niet kinderloos was geweest en vlak voor zijn dood vol heimwee naar een leven dat hij nooit had gehad. Als hij niet om die reden zijn ring, zijn enige sieraad, naar mijn oma had gestuurd, met de opdracht hem aan een toekomstige naamgenoot in de familie te schenken. Als mijn oma op mijn 18e verjaardag niet vergeten was een cadeau voor mij te kopen en ik die dag niet bij haar op bezoek was gegaan, als zij niet nerveus om zich heen had gekeken of ze ergens nog iets had liggen wat in de verste verte op een cadeau leek, als haar oog niet op het zwarte leren doosje was gevallen met daarin de ring die al 12 jaar op de juiste vinger lag te wachten, als ik mezelf niet had opgezadeld met een belofte, waardoor mijn eerste zwangerschap volledig in het teken zou staan van een bomaanslag op 5 december 1946, dan was dit verhaal de kleine, spiegelgladde mythe gebleven die het 70 jaar lang is geweest.
Dat is dan weer. Ja,
Maybe I was just reading a recipe, you don't know.
No. It was the melody of the story. Če ne bi dopolnila 18 let, 12 let potem, ko je dali stric v pritlični hiši v Španiji pričakoval svoj konec, če ta ne bi bil brez otrok in če se ne bi v njem tik pred smrtjo vzbudilo domotožje po življenju, ki ga nikoli ni imel, če ne bi ravno iz tega razloga svojega prstena, edinega kosa nakita, ki ga je imel, poslal moje babici z navodilom, naj ga podari nasledniku, ki bo nosil njegovo ime, če mi babica ne bi pozabila kupiti darila za 18. rojstni dan in če je ne bi jaz obiskala ravno tistega dne, če se ne bi ta živčno razgledovala naokoli, iščoč nekaj, kar bi vsaj približno spominjalo na darilo, če se ji pogled ne bi ustavil na črni usnjeni šatulici, v kateri je prsta že 12 let čakal na pravi prst, če si ne bi naprtala obljube, zaradi katere bo moja prva nosečnost v celoti posvečena bombnemu napadu, ki se je zgodil 5. decembra 1946, bi ta zgodba ostala majcen kot ogledalo gladek mit, kot je bila vseh 70 let poprej. No, tako pa zveni. That was the same part in Slovene. So we have a melody, you know?
Yes.
So there's something that's similar. There's one sentence which I find really important for the whole story. It says, you have to, if you want to understand a man, you have to understand his war. And I think it was really important, actually, message for this great Uncle Franz, because how can you understand in what situation was he when he did what he did, if we don't know the past in which he was living in?
That's the question I have throughout the whole book. How can you ever judge something in the past? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very universal question that we always struggle with in every era, because you try to see what was right and what was wrong, and you always know that you are missing information. So you never know what war it actually was. We think we know a war, any war, but we never really know. And also there's these wars inside people, and they continue. And I write in the book, for me an important question is also how long, when does a war end? And in a way it never ends, because we carry wars, we all carry wars, and then there's a new war and we pass it on, and so it's layered, like all these layered wars and traumas that we live on, actually.
What was the most interesting, or maybe not to say shocking, thing that you learned about your great Uncle Franz, or about the story which he was actually living? Because he had his love, he actually was not without a child, and he actually had a life of his own. We just know him as a bomber, but he was not.
Yeah. Well, one thing is that what moved me was that he had a son for a few days who died, which sort of made me more empathic towards him. But then I also learned something that was very shocking to me. The fact I just said that, the fact that this girl died as well during the bomb attack while she was 17, and I found there a list of their woundings from the hospital. So they had this list of everything that was wrong with their bodies, and it was a very clinical list. But that was actually true. You found it. Yeah, it's exactly this list. Yeah, it was in the archives, and it was very harsh list. And then I found the family of this girl, and that was for me the most moving in the whole search, because these were actually the children of her older sister, and the older sister had been next to her when she was in the hospital dying, and this older sister had always carried that loss of this younger sister, and she was always hurt because she lost her sister. And she told her children about this sister, and she said, I miss her so much. And they told me when their mother died, the last thing she was talking about was this little sister that she lost. So it was like the big loss of her life. And then I met these children, and we were sitting in the garden, and it was so strange because we were talking about people that from other generations, but they were crying because they were crying for their mother. And I was sitting there and not understanding, like, what should I feel, should I apologize? But this man is like a faraway uncle, it's more than 70 years ago. So that was a very confusing moment for me. And also because I realized that this girl, she was 17 and she was working with this family, so she was poor. And I come from a very influential family. So my uncle he had a lot of influence. And he had a name that anywhere he could drop this name and he could get away with anything because of the family that he was from. And I write that in the book also, that made me so angry that this girl was completely forgotten. Nobody has ever mentioned her in this whole bombing story. She was not part of the myth in my family. And he has not been forgotten. And I think the only reason is because she was a poor girl who had a name that people could simply ignore, especially in those times. And he was a man with a title, and he actually the queen also released him from prison. He's been in prison very short time, and after that he messed up again and again. So he should have stayed there actually.
You had to be really honest with yourself also, by not just by writing. I mean, not just in the process of writing, but to know some things about your family which are not just nice or just easy. How was it for you? Because this is your family story. Although it's not your grandfather, it's your great uncle, but still.
Yeah, but I think that it's very basic. Everybody knows that every family that every family has good and bad stories. And I was a bit, I think what my family gave me was a sense of history, sense of where I came from, and like a million stories. I grew up with too many stories. Every piece of furniture had a story. Mm-hmm. So that was very nice. But what I missed was like the backside of that. I never heard where that money came from or who worked for all those things. So I think from a very young age I felt like someone had to tell the other half. And I have more people in my family. We have filmmakers in my family and more writers. So there's a lot of people working on the other half. and the rest of that family is sort of looking anxiously at us. But I think it's important I'm actually doing it for the family. And I tell them that. I say, if we don't tell the part of, like, we're a fake family if we don't tell this as well.
So I already said that there are two lines in the story. Actually, the one is this traveling through the time to the past, to the story of France, and actually, a very strong line is also the story of this young pregnant woman, which actually experiences changes of the body, of the mind, you said, I was afraid that I will never write again, because I will lose all the control, and actually this book was written when you were pregnant for the second time.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's when I wrote it down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's why it's written so quickly, because I had the same feeling. I thought, okay, but now I'm really never going to write again.
But it's not true.
No, it didn't happen. Right.
You are a journalist. You have this journalist soul, actually, because maybe in this researcher soul. Was that helpful? I guess it was really helpful to write that kind of book because you had to get a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, helpful, but also actually everything I write is in this style. So I think it's just my way of working, because the research is always part of the story. So you have writers that research and then they write everything. And for me, the writing starts the moment I start researching. So it's always this journey.
We were just talking with Jeta before. It's so nice and easy to read, although you get a lot of information in one sentence, but there's no complicated thoughts in the meaning that you have to, what was that? What is the meaning or something? And it's a bit journalistic, but it's still novelistic way. I mean, it's really nice to read. I enjoyed it. When I was reading, I was asking myself, why is she doing this? She's I don't know. You with titles 24 to go, then you have just 10 weeks to go. I know when I was pregnant, and I had a really nice pregnancy. Yours was not one of them. Your description of your pregnancy is really not really easy. It wasn't really easy. Why is she doing this? Where was the inspiration? Where was the urge to do? Where does it come from? This urge to do it, to finish it before the the firstborn is born.
Yeah, well, I think it's what I just said, that this feeling that I also had while writing it, because I was pregnant again, this feeling of losing control makes you want to write. And I think a lot of writers write because they want control.
Okay.
So that's your sort of, that's the drive.
What about the question of the name? What will I give this, what name will I give to this?
Well, that was, of course, the drive to research it. But when I was writing it, I already had named my first child. So that wasn't a question anymore. But that was the question that drove me in the beginning. Yeah.
Was there a wish inside of you that your firstborn could be Frans? Did you like this name?
Well, I liked it, but actually my boyfriend, or the father of my sons, he didn't like it. Yeah. So even before I started the research, he said, no matter what the outcome is, we're not going to name him Frans. But okay. I didn't write that in the book because that's a very short story. And also, actually, he didn't decide on the name. I said, they have your last name, so I decide the first name. But yeah, it would have been nice. It would have been nice. But as I said, for me, it was more important to give him a story, to give my children a story before they would be old, and it will be a story about what they carry with them, and about family, and about right and about wrong, and those. Yeah.
There's a lot of questioning about what is right, what is wrong. I like this, her inner, actually, monologues when she's talking with herself. What really happened? What to believe? I was asking myself what to believe, because I liked Frans in the beginning of the book. I like, it's really nice. But then, when you read and you read, well, do I still? It's not that do you like him or not, but what is the truth? What to believe? And I think this is the main question of the history of the past time. What to believe? Because a lot of information was or hidden or changed or How did you know that this is the right information? Was there any information which was, I don't know, someone said something and the other said something different for the same thing?
Because there was a lot of contradictory information. Yes. But I also write in the story at a certain point that I sort of take over. So I have all this information and I know that it can never be complete. So I just decide, okay, I'm going to make the story now. And that's also a part where it's fictionalized. So in the end, I write something that didn't actually happen. But I also write that I'm fictionalizing the story, because I needed to, otherwise there was no story. So I think at a certain point, you have to decide, okay, with all the information that I can find, what is the lesson that I take out of this, and what story do I make of this? And as we see now in this time when history seems to stand up in everyone again, in Holland, maybe it's less here, but we've had a lot of colonies in Holland, and this decolonization process is like, it's huge now. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's reliving this colonization, and you think, but it's been how long, and still it's as like urgent as ever. So history, it doesn't go away, not until you've solved something, I think. And maybe you can never really solve something, but you have to have this dialogue with history.
We carry it with ourselves, like you said before, in our genes, actually.
Yeah, that seems even sort of beyond ourselves sometimes. If you see what happens worldwide now, how like old stories suddenly flare up, you know, and they are front page news. It's all old stories, and they're back in new people. So that's very interesting, I think.
How do Dutch people read this book? Because it's actually a story about their past also.
Yeah, but in Holland we have quite a lot of. There's been a lot written about Second World War, so and also a lot about this I can never pronounce that name. Ambiguïteit, we say in Dutch. You are English. Ambiguity.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's not something shocking for Dutch people. Mm-hmm. No.
Okay, Marjolijn, maybe I would also like to hear a bit of English, a translation of your book, because just to cue the melody, maybe just a short part.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah, please.
Then I just read the first line, so maybe I will read the last part, then you've sort of had the whole book.
Not really.
You only need to read the middle, that's... let's see. Oh, sorry, this is the Dutch. 1 second. Okay, so this is right after the birth. And yeah, I could also read the birth. I don't know if anyone in particular wants to hear about it. I always like to read, especially when there's a lot of men. But I can.
There are a few men, so
because you know, I don't know how it is here in Slovenia, but in Holland, it's very hard to find good scenes in which giving birth is actually described. It's always, as you see in movies, you know, people are pregnant. And then it's sort of like, ooh, and we go to another shot, and then there's the baby. Mm-hmm. And you or maybe you see them scream.
And mom with makeup.
Yeah, or you scream 1 or 2 times, and after they are like flat again. It's really weird. So I thought I want to have more like scenes where people give birth and it hurts like hell. So I wrote that down, but I won't read it now. I will.
Why not?
Nah,
there's enough men here, so
Tuesday night. Give the people a break. But if you want to read it, it's in the book. So this is right after the birth. So and I read bommenneef, and that's how we call the Frans, the uncle, and it's actually literally translated. It's called cousin Bom. That's what he was called in my family. Yeah. I asked D. D is David, my boyfriend. I asked Dee to bring a mirror from home so I don't need to keep staggering to the bathroom to see if I've started looking like myself again. When he gets back, he sets Bommenneef's ring, so this one, on the nightstand. I thought you might want to wear it again. I hesitate. I look at my hands, which in 2 days have shrunk to almost their normal size. Then I slide it onto my middle finger. The gold feels cool against my skin. Family comes to visit. They bring you clothes, the you is the baby, and a set of dishes. You get picked up. The first time it feels like I'm the one sailing through the air and laying against the torso of a grandma or grandpa, but the distance grows by the hour, as though the process of being born keeps on going, and slowly but surely you slip ever further out of me. I miss you. Everyone asks for your name. The evening ward is quiet for the first time. No birds, only the voice of Mariah Carey coming from a distant radio. You lie on my stomach and make strange, high-pitched sounds. I reply in kind, a fish-to-fish sonar conversation. One of us is breathing heavily. There is a heart beating fast and furiously. Yours, mine, ours. My blood pressure is stable and has dropped sufficiently. We can go home tomorrow. I wanted to say we are not ready, that we're not prepared for this new situation, this being 2 people. I wanted to ask if they put you back in so I could walk around forever with a fat belly and only the prospect of a new personhood, rather than this huge open life we now face. And I'm so sorry that you have to become someone, are someone, that I can no longer protect you from life or protect myself. I want snow, I want a white, muffled world, but it's raining and storming outside. Things shake, make noise, glisten with wetness. And I'm sorry that one day I will disappoint you and you me, that soon I'll no longer feel your heart beating in my own chest, that already you're drifting away from me, that Dee and I will settle you with photos, stories, myths and expectations, with families and with deep, undefined fears that plague our reptilian brain. I'm sorry that one day you'll come home and ask why there's war, and who's good and who's bad. And this is if all goes well, if you yourself don't get caught up in the violence we now fear. I'm so sorry that one day you might have to make the decision I never had to make, at least not yet, to go with the flow or to resist. And I'm sorry that you'll learn that no one gets to the finish line with entirely clean hands, that this is a world where we tend to downplay what's good because we know too much and don't dare hope enough.
As you can hear, a lot of really intimate parts actually. This is one of them, I guess. Really lively. Also, there is some tensions in the book, which I like. Tensions in a way like a suspense, we say. Really nice flow. There are some. I was a few times. I was really surprised about some information. But for the last question, Marjolijn, what was the main message now when the book is born and it has its name? What was your main goal or main message you wanted to pass to the world with it? You were talking about we have to tell stories about the past because they are running actually in our lives again. They're popping back. But what was now if you look back, what was this main message afterwards?
It sort of, it changes a little bit. Sometimes I feel like it's mostly about what we already talked about, how all these events from the past flow through us to next generations. Sometimes I feel it's about making stories and the importance of making stories. Sometimes it's about the fact that you have to decide what's good and bad, even though you can't. So the impossibility of that. But I guess it's all of that.
You wrote everybody asking what is your name. We won't tell because really cautious reader can tell. Actually, you told it. You tell that in the book. But now you have two children.
Mm-hmm.
And you're working on what now? You're still writing I know you're writing for the newspapers, but what about the novel? Or
I just finished a non-fiction book about space.
About space?
Space and space travel.
Okay.
And what it can teach us about our lives now.
When will it, what will be the date of...
It was published in May.
It's already published.
It's being translated this fall in English, so hopefully here as well.
Marjolijn, welcome in another book with in Goga. So, what are your plans for you? You will stay till Friday in Slovenia. What are your plans? Going to Ljubljana?
Yeah, tomorrow to
finding another way to Krka, swim to the river.
I have to swim. Maybe Thursday. I heard it's going to be warm.
Yeah, it's going to be warm. But you better swim here in Krka River, not in Ljubljana.
No, here, definitely.
Marjolijn, thank you so much for this book, for this conversation.
Thank you.
And for visiting Slovenia. I hope it's not for the last time. How old are your children now?
The oldest one is 6 already.
Okay.
And the youngest is 4.
So, next time you come with them. You can come
Hopefully,
with them. Hopefully.
Yes. Thank you.
Dragi poslušalci oziroma obiskovalke, to preklapljanje iz angleščine v slovenščino. Danes je seveda knjiga s podpisom avtorice na voljo z po znižani ceni. Kot vidite, Marjolijn je ena taka zelo iskriva sogovornica in moram reči, jaz preberem veliko knjig, zato ker imam tako najlepšo službo na svetu. Ampak ta knjiga, to sem tako jedrt tudi rekla in Vesni, me je res navdušila. Prvič zato, ker ima čudovit flow, čudovito prepletanje resničnosti tu in zdaj in tega, kar je govorila Marjolijn, kako zelo pomembno je, kako se nas dotikajo zgodbe iz preteklosti, tudi če je to nizozemska zgodba, ker ni nizozemska, je evropska in je naša. Zato berite in ime mu bo in ugotovite, kako mu je ime. Zdaj je star 6 let. Well, I just said that I really enjoyed your book, just to make the story shorter. And you will sign the book, of course, if someone comes along. And thank you. Have a nice day here. In hvala sem vam.